Anyway, but I started to invest in myself. I got some books, like get paid, learning how to get paid to speak and all that kind of stuff. And it really helped me outline things and again, I walked it back to being whatever you're trying to do, be as specific as you can. For me in speaking, it was, what is my core audience? What is the demographic within that audience? What is the age? What is my keynote speech? What is exactly the thing that I'm going to speak on that I can just like immediately tell somebody? Right. And getting so specific, because you can't be everything for everyone, right? And if you try to be, you'll be nothing to everyone. Yeah.
This episode is brought to you by Big Storage Ventures. We are now inviting you to team up and partner alongside us. We bring our experience hunting storage deals and maximizing the self-storage asset to provide our partners with cash flow, tax benefits, and appreciation, all in one recession-resistant asset. Leverage our sister company, Big Ben's Moving Service, to fill your facility and give you an edge over the competition. Reach out to bigstorageventures@gmail.com or DM Big Storage Ventures on Instagram to team up.
Yeah, so started at Goldman Sachs in 2017. And I'm so happy that's where I started first, because if I would have started anywhere else and then tried to go there, I think the transition would be way more difficult. I mean, you're working 50, 80-hour weeks and super, super intense. So
is a lot of it grueling too? Like, is a lot of it like really daunting work?
Yeah, I would say so. I think it depends where you are, because there's so many different divisions. Right. And I was in the operations side, and so you had tons of deadlines. Like, you could make a huge mistake that would cost a client tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, even millions of dollars. And it is super intense. I mean, you're eating lunch at your desk most every day. You're sitting there for 10 to 12 hours, like just going, Yeah. So it was a really good opportunity, I think, to start there. And it really, I think, pole vaulted me to kind of the end of story where I'm at now in the whole entrepreneurship side, because it showed me how hard I could work. Yes. And how much pressure I could have and perform, And so I was about a year and a half into Goldman, and my wife asked me, she's like, if you could do anything in this world, what would you want to do? And I was like, well, I think I told you guys this at our lunch. I was like, well, honestly, if I could unrealistically, I would play in the NFL. That's what I would choose. But that was dead and gone at Dixie State University,
where we played together.
That we did.
Yeah, second string for life.
Let's go, scout team, all stars. No, just kidding. Yeah, so we she's asked me that, and I was like, more realistically though, I would love to be a speaker. And just when I remember exactly where we were. We were in our car, and somebody was driving us, but we were in the back seat, and she was just asking me that. And that kind of just, from there, that's like where the domino started to fall, was that one question. And it just got me thinking, okay, if I, at this time I'm 24 years old, if I were to jump into doing something that I loved, worked just as hard, just as many hours, put as much pressure on myself as I did here, there was no way that I wouldn't be successful doing something that I actually loved at such a young age. And so took the leap. About 6 months later, hit the 2-year mark at Goldman, got a normal 40-hour week job, and spent the other 40 hours building a speaking platform. And working with student athletes, because that was where my niche was in Utah. So I was doing corporate sales at that time too. That was my transition. That was like my pay the bills kind of job. And about that time, SHI, hit the fan in my life. And everything kind of fell apart in my personal life. My relationship with my wife, relationship with my higher power, like all these things started just to crumble all at once. And that threw me into heavy recovery, addiction recovery, trauma recovery, personal marriage counseling, personal counseling, group therapy, all of that for years, and doing that, hours and hours of that a week. And everything changed in my life from there on, in the sense of professionally, everything got drastically better. I was able to perform at a higher rate. I started breaking records in my company. And I didn't change anything but working on my mind and my heart. And so I was speaking again. I was speaking that time, and I would go speak for 60 minutes, and everybody would be stoked out of their mind, but then everybody would leave, and 15 minutes later, everybody's back to their normal life, right? So I just felt like there was so much more I could do. So I started to build a program and built this company called Momentum, Mental Emotional Skill Performance. And so work with student athletes, started to get my MBA at the University of Tennessee. I was out there and started to make this transition in the door-to-door space, home services, everything from solar, pest, windows, alarms, and roofs. I had no clue people were going door-to-door for all these different things. But now that I've been in space, so I made that transition. I thought it was going to be a slow transition throughout my MBA. And I know I wanted to get in more of the corporate side, but there was such a need in the space that it just took off. It took off. So ended up finished my MBA barely. I missed like half of it because I was traveling so much because of the business, and graduated about 3 months ago. I start my PhD in psychology this year. Wow. And just been running Momentum in the door-to-door space now for the past about 2 years.
Congratulations, man. We want to dive more into Momentum, but I want to zoom in on kind of that first part of the story where your wife asked you if you could do anything, what would you want to be, right? And now your whole business is centered around the mind and the heart. But I think it's really cool that one simple thing, you could call it vision casting or dreaming up as big as you want. And I think it's something that if everyone did it, they would be way better off just to check in and see where they want to be. Yeah,
so true. So true. I think there's one of my mentors in the speaking space, his name is Clint Pulver, and he talks about how essentially like one moment, he doesn't say it like this, but one moment can change the rest of the moments you might ever have. And I think that's so true, that when everything comes together, there is one moment. And I think we're all striving for that one moment to find, oh, that's my purpose. That's my why. And sometimes it takes a while to get there, and sometimes it just falls in your lap and anywhere in between. But to your point, that's exactly what that was for me. It was that moment.
Yeah, I love that. And, shows the support, your wife, like helping. It's amazing the women in our lives that can help unlock us to reach our full potential. That's what I get out of that. But what I was thinking, I'm glad, Ben, we kind of zoomed out and zoomed right in on that. And I want to hopefully do the same thing on each part of your story. But one thing that came to my mind was why you wanted to be a speaker. How did you know that's what you loved? Was there a speaker that influenced you that you're like, one time you're like, that's who I want to be? Or did you get an opportunity to speak somewhere and that's how you knew that's what you loved and that's what you would want to do forever?
Yeah, I think I had like one of those mini moments in probably my senior year in my undergrad at Dixie State, Utah Tech. And I had a year left of school. And maybe it was at this point I had a semester left at school. I wasn't married. I had no clue what I really wanted to do. Like I had 4 months to figure out my life is what I was feeling like. And I just got some advice of, think what at the like grassroots, what is it that you would love to do? What you could wake up, not a job, but a feeling. What is it a feeling that you could have and have that every day? And I had the thought of, if I love the idea of giving somebody some piece of advice or guidance or thought or something, and then them taking that and then them being successful from that. And I was like, I can't think of anything more fulfilling than that. And so I think at that moment, fast forward a year, 2 years after that, fast forward 2 years when my wife asked me that question, it's like those dots linked. I thought that it was finance because I was like, I can give somebody financial advice that would benefit them financially and go help them build. And that was the track that I was on. But being in the financial world, I realized that, at that moment, it's like, that's not what I want to do. Being a speaker, be able to give somebody something, have them have it impact their lives, nothing more fulfilling. So that's where the dots connected.
Yeah, it's common, you see the ability to impact someone's life, and it's just kind of born inside of us to want to help people around us, I'm not sure where, if there was another thing you want to go into, Ben, but I kind of wanted to go now into this other pivotal moment, right, where everything collapsed. And I think about it all the time, like I wonder we're in the grind and the hustle so much. I mean, you're talking, you were grinding super hard in Goldman Sachs, but you cut back to a normal job just so you could do 40 hours on your own, you know, and then, but what advice would you give someone from what you learned with that? Like, would you say, hey, you know, just go get a regular job and focus on, you know, your wife or your family. Like, don't worry about, like, this grind's not worth it. Or was there another lesson that you learned or anything from that experience?
From the experience of leaving Goldman and jumping.
Yeah, like everything collapsed. I'm not sure why, but like you were talking about like how it all came apart. And I wonder if it's like you're running, you know, so much, so fast, like all the time. Like you're being pulled into so many different places and you're giving your attention to so many different places. And then the foundation starts to crack and, you know, and then stuff just falls apart.
Yeah.
And sometimes it doesn't for people, like, you know, sometimes it doesn't all fall apart like you described. But for others, maybe it's like not what's important. Maybe like their family doesn't fall apart, but maybe they lose a job or something. I don't know.
Well, and you had said that every aspect kind of fell apart at once. Why is that? Because I've heard the same thing very recently from other people. Why do you think everything happened at the same time?
Yeah, I think the only part that didn't completely collapse was my pay the bills job. Like that was it. And COVID hit, so I was building momentum with speaking, and then nobody's gathering in places, right? And so everything. I think, I mean, you hear the phrase, when it rains, it pours. I think that's so real. And like at that time, my life flipping flooded, you know? And I think that it's so common because I think we are, we're spinning so many plates, to your point, that when one falls, your focus goes on that, then you lose, you know, and you're distracted, and then this other one falls. And I think it's a part of, whether you want to call it universe or God or whatever it is, I think those are the moments that matter the most, is when everything falls apart. Because then you get to see the people that are around you and the people that are in your circle that'll be there till the end. And you get to see the people, meaning your higher power or the universe, whatever you call that, to be there to uplift you, you know, and that you have nothing else to lean on. And, you know, whether, you know, in being a religious person and going to church a lot, you hear tons about faith. We hear so much about faith, you know, in spirituality or religion, whatever it is. And I think the reason why we hear so much of it is because it is the single hardest thing to have, and the single hardest thing to use and utilize and do is have faith when that's all you have. You don't have anything else. And there's something super special in those moments that allow you to really not only enjoy when it does get better, but be able to have that education as you go through and be uplifted when that's all you have, you know, when that's all you have.
Absolutely. Right. And what were some of those things that helped pull you out of that collapse? What are some of the first steps you'd advise someone to take who's maybe listening in that situation?
Yeah, I would, anybody that's listening in that situation or feels like that they're running from something, I just please stop running. Please, like, face it, figure it out. Whatever it is, just figure it out. Because in the end, you're going to be so much farther of where you want to go by figuring it out. If you're in that moment where you're broken and down, the number one thing that we all strive for as humans is connection. That's why we stay in abusive relationships. That's why we stay in relationships that aren't good for us, whether they're abusive or not. That's why we want to be in the in crowd. Whatever it is because we strive for connection. Just like an antelope running on the safari, they don't, you know, why do they stay in packs? Safety. Yeah. You know, if you get singled out. So that's why, like, when we're going through adulthood, even childhood, whatever, especially in our teen years, our brains like, do whatever you can, say whatever you can, dress however you can to make sure that you fit in. Because if you don't, you get eaten. Yeah. And I think that was the number one thing that I realized is how important connection is, and those connections that you have that are healthy. So if you have toxic connection, take the risk, cut it off. You know, if you have toxic connection with outside things, whatever it is, substances, whatever it might be, cut it off, because we're looking for those things for connection. But as soon as you can get a genuine, authentic, real connection, that's when life really starts. That's when it all begins.
Absolutely. I want to, one big takeaway that I got is simply, you said, face it, right? And I've seen that a lot resurface in my life lately, where I've been with friends that maybe they need to face their financial situation, right? Like take a look at their spending, be willing to sit down every month with their spouse or their business partner and look at the statements, right? Look at the receipts. You can face it in a marriage, right? Like that's definitely a big one, where if you see something starting to drift, it's time to stop it in its tracks and look in the mirror together as a couple. Because if you let that go too far, that's bad news, right? And it goes for everything, right? Like your physical health, your emotional health. Like there could be something in every single circumstance where you say, time for me to face it. And I think it's about learning how to build up that sensitivity to, you know, being in tune with yourself, right? And that's why we pray. That's why we take time for meditation. That's why we read the scriptures. That's why we, you know, take time to do things like what you put through people through mental exercises, is because you need to, that's why we do masterminds, right? That's why we get babysitters and take our wife out once a year for a goal setting retreat, is because you need those moments to zoom out, and instead of being inside of it, take a look from above, right? And so I think it's a really big takeaway.
Absolutely. It's so true. I mean, the most important thing I think that we can all do is looking under our own hood and starting there. So if we don't have the perspective on ourselves, we can't have perspective on anything else, really.
Yeah. Okay, now I want you to get into momentum. How did you come up with the name Momentum, and what's the mission statement?
Yeah. So Momentum, the name itself, came about not too long ago. When I was speaking to student athletes, that's what I spoke on, was momentum. I've always been really fascinated with the idea of momentum. We think of it in two different ways, of sports and physics usually. If you take the sports side, you think of, you know, there's something that shifts, the tide changes, whatever it is. But say it's, you know, basketball. The size of the ball doesn't change. The players don't change. The coaches don't change. The rules don't change. The size of the court doesn't change. The size of the hoop changes. Nothing changes except for something in your head and something behind your chest.
Yeah.
And so that got me thinking of, man, if that's something that's internal, then there's a way that I could probably harness and build this for myself, that I could be able to create that in my own life, create that momentum. Because obviously I have control of it, because it's in my own head, it's in my own heart. And so that kind of birthed this idea of momentum. And that's essentially what I teach through performance psychology and therapeutic skills. You put those together and teach people how to generate momentum in their lives. And it might be healing trauma, and it might be, you know, getting through anxiety, or whatever it could be, you know, learning how to be confident in themselves. But essentially that's kind of where it came from. And the mission statement is creating momentum to change and save lives.
Love it.
That's the goal.
I wish I had a little bit of that when I was playing sports in high school. I mean, you can tell, like, when you're confident, and confidence is such a powerful thing.
Yeah.
Because like you said, it's in your mind. Like you could wake up one day and because of some random thing, you're feeling confident that day. Or because like in your mind, you flip that switch and like you're feeling confident. But like if you could somehow quantify your performance as an athlete, like the higher your confidence, like you're just playing great ball. But yet when the fears come in, or when the anxieties come in, and when you lose some of that confidence, you underperform, and then it kind of like, it's negative, bad momentum downhill, because then you start beating yourself up and you keep going down. So I mean, it would be nice to have, you know, control of that.
Well, and as adults now, like that translates into our day-to-day life, whether it's your relationship, with that momentum, you know, with your spouse, or that confidence with your spouse. Like a spouse doesn't want, especially a woman doesn't want their man walking in generally and like moping around and not feeling confident. To her old brain, that's like, I'm not going to be safe. He can't protect me, you know. But to a man that's able to walk in and with his shoulders back and held up high, like that's a man people are going to follow. That's a woman that people are going to follow. Same thing with, in business, there's a sense of the ability to generate this confidence within yourself. And we all go through these lulls and these ups and downs, but just like what we're all searching for, it all comes back to connectivity. The more connected we are with ourselves, the more confident we are. Because if we're connected with ourselves, that means we're not trying to pull off of somebody else to get their validation or their acceptance, or it doesn't matter what this person says or what happened with this deal or what's happening with my wife. I know who I am. I'm so connected with who I am at my heart. I'm connected with God and my higher power that I know I'm going to be okay, whatever it is. I know that I'm going to be able to provide. I know that I'm going to be able to protect. And there's no, and no, I'm not saying I'm perfect at this at all, because it is the ups and downs, but there's no other answer than that of just being connected to yourself creates that confidence.
So how do you, like in your programs or in your trainings, what do you do to help people get that connection, that confidence?
Yeah, that's a big question. Yeah, that's a big question.
I'm like, I want some of that. I want some of that.
It really starts just wherever the person is at. Generally, we have things in our lives and burdens that we're holding, things that are on our shoulders, things that are heavy on our heart that we don't even realize that we're holding because we've held it for so long. And so it's usually getting down to things below the surface, getting down the root, and we generally have maybe one or two roots of things that are just growing, perpetuating, and we see it as smoke. And one of my favorite quotes is, where there's smoke, there's fire. And we see that smoke in our lives, and it's only when we get to the fire we can really resolve that smoke. And so I always start with, there's this, I guess, a concrete tidbit would be, you have three parts of you. You have your child self, your teen self, and your adult self. You are every day that you've lived. Every day that you have lived from day 0 to now is a part of you now. Your nervous system harnesses all that, doesn't forget anything. Your nervous system also doesn't know time. That's why trauma, you can have something happen in the past. It can come up now, like a
thought,
a thought. A soldier came home from Afghanistan. He was 2 months or 3 months off of his tour, and he's driving on I-15 going 85 miles per hour. A plastic bag rolls past him. What does he do? Swerve out of the way, hit the car next to him. They fly into the shoulder. Luckily, everybody survives. But to his nervous system, to his limbic brain, not his cognitive side, because to us, we all know that's just a plastic bag. To him, he's thinking, I'm in Afghanistan. That's a roadside bomb.
Yeah.
So nervous system doesn't know time. So you have those three parts of you, and they're with you. What brought you joy as a child? What brought you joy as a teenager? What brings you joy as an early adult will probably bring you joy today. Like, I guarantee for me, like going and playing Legos, I freaking love it still. I'm almost 30 years old. Going and getting an ice cream cone, same thing, because that connects me with my grandfather who's passed away, who's my hero. But those things, and so you find things that brought you joy back then. You also find the things that hurt you the most. You can find the things that hurt you the most, the part of you that needs somebody to fight for them, that needed somebody to show up, to be there for them, to just let them know that it's okay. You can go and show up for that person, because your nervous system doesn't know time, whether it's past, future, present. So you can go back in time, connect with that person, heal them up, and be connected.
Wow. It's really powerful.
Yeah, I mean, being able to be introspective is what's going to give you that ability to make the changes necessary, right?
Mm-hmm.
I love it. What's the most common thing you see with people? Like, what's the number one concern, problem, thing that it shows up a lot in a lot of your clients?
Yeah. I think the number one thing, whether they know it or not, is, I don't know if it's best described as confidence. It's more so, I think, just owning who you are and not allowing for others, especially that are closest, even if they're best intentions, to dictate who we are. Being your own person. There's a book, No More Mr. Nice Guy, a life-changing book like that. If there's anything that's taken from this podcast, please go read that book.
Tell us about the book.
So No More Mr. Nice Guy, this is a huge principle that you asked what is the most, the common thing I see, and this is in women and men, but just having other people dictate who they are. Generally, it's from our program from the very beginning. We seek approval from our parents for survival. If they don't approve of us, we get neglected. And so same thing. It's all about survival. It's all about connection. And so we try to morph into people that other people want us to morph into, especially those that love us most. So you think about your spouse. In what ways do I, even though it's the most just kind-hearted thing that I'm trying to do I compromise on things that I like, the things that I want to do? And so much deeper than that on who I am. And it's in no way to say that, I'm just going to be a selfish SOB. Like, I'm not just going to be super selfish, but I am going to be inward and make sure that I'm taken care of first, that my cup is full. Because if I can't take care of myself, then I can't show up and take care of the others.
Yes.
If I can't show up for myself and be who I need to be, then I'm showing up as 75% of myself to the people that need me to be 100%, and they don't deserve that.
Mm-hmm.
So you can call it selfish, you can call it whatever it is, but really finding at your core, at your heart, who you are, what you're about, and then being okay with having an opinion, having a voice, having boundaries, saying no. All of that is so more beneficial to the people in your life than just being a freaking doormat.
Absolutely. And I think it comes back to long-term thinking, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you get caught in a cycle of being something you're not, or doing something you don't want to do, right? You can survive that way for a while, but guess what? Then you're going to have
collapse.
Something else is going to give you burnout, collapse. Something else is going to catch up with you, right? And I think it's so nice when people are direct with you, whether it's the people on your team, your spouse. Like, for me, I don't know. I feel like that's something that I like to be, is direct, because I know I'm not serving people if I'm being passive aggressive, right? And so it's something that I like to ask of people too, is like, hey, be direct with me if you can at all, right? And it takes some soft skills to be direct,
absolutely,
without offending people, but it gets you a long way in life.
Totally. I mean, and if you're able to understand that initially, like, the people on your team might not like it when you say, hey, sorry, no, I can't come in, or I can't cover this for you, or I can't do this for you. They might not like it that. They might think, well, what the heck? I would do that for you, or whatever it is. Or same with your spouse. She might not like it when say, hey, like, I can't come snuggle right now. I need to continue to work for the next 30 minutes. That might be tough. But in the end, thinking long-term, again, thinking with the end in mind, like Steven Covey says, is when you do show up for them, they know it's the most authentic and real you. They know that you're there 100%. There's nothing that is being held back from you in their presence. And so it, long-term wise, it creates these healthier relationships and your ability to feel safe and confident enough to do that.
It's the Simon Cowell theory. You guys know Simon Cowell?
Yeah.
From American Idol?
Mm-hmm.
Like, his opinion is the most valuable opinion.
Yeah.
Because he's always so direct and honest, and he's brutally honest. Like, he was famous for being, brutal, but it's like when he tears up, when he's telling,
it's real.
It's real.
Yeah.
And like, instead of someone who's nice all the time.
Yeah.
But it's truly a powerful thing, but it's obviously not easy, because you could be, look like a jerk like he has.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and it allows you to live in the most congruency or integral way that you could live. It's the most honest you can be. And there's tact with that. Like, we're not, just going to be jerks, but there's tact with it. But allows you to be so integral and live a connected life, because you're not betraying yourself every day.
Right. So going back to Ben's question with what you're seeing with door-to-door sales guys right now, what are you seeing with them? Maybe do you have like an example or a case study? Because I know, like, summer sales is not easy at all. It's actually really, really hard. I've never done it, but if you like, actually I did do a 1 week tryout one time.
How was it? Were you cut out for it?
I could have done it. I would have pushed through, like, done it, but it's not fun.
No,
it's definitely not fun. And I just know people in my life that have tried it, and they just get defeated so fast, because it's just one of those industries, knocking on doors, lots of, it's really hard work, but it's also mentally tough. So, walk us through maybe an example of someone like that's going through that. And then what do you do to, do you say, hey, you're actually not cut out for it? after your assessment, or like, anyways.
No, you start the momentum shift.
Yeah, you say, sorry, you need to quit now.
You're actually too far gone.
You are a wuss.
And here's my bill.
Yes, that'll be $150. No,
you could pre-screen like with these recruiters. You could be like the pre-screener. You know, they're spending all the money and like recruiting kids, and they just go out there and they just
that's an idea. Have Jenz assess them and figure out their mental toughness to give them an according
before you hire them
sign-on bonus and commission structure.
Yeah, because they throw out all those benefits, and then if you get them out there and get them in an apartment. Like, what if you did an assessment before, like, and you go through your training, like the mental emotional therapy side, and then like, this guy, he's not gonna go.
It's assessing risk.
Yeah. There could be something there for sure. I think the thing is what it comes down to is choice. Like, I think anybody, and I've done it long enough now in this space, that if you choose to work on yourself, like, you can do it. It is. I think it's one of the hardest jobs you could have, to do what these door-to-door salesmen do. Just the amount of rejection. You know, it's hot, it's cold, it's whatever. It's day in, day out. It's the same exact thing. Every pitch is the same, essentially. Like, it's so mundane. All of that. That's why it's so lucrative, I think, too. Yeah. But anybody could really do. I think, kind of going into what you're saying, I think. I mentioned where there's smoke, there's fire. And that's the number one thing I've learned, I think, doing it with door-to-door salesmen is the issue is rarely on the surface. It's usually layers deep. And as far as an example, there's so many, but I think just recently, a week ago, I was meeting with a rep, and he was talking to me. We were talking about how much he's knocking and where he wants to be and everything like that. And he's talking to me about what his schedule on this next blitz is going to look like, and he left out Saturday, which is, I was just surprised because that's the prime knocking day for these guys, where you have both the homeowners there and home, and he said, well, I don't knock on Saturdays, and I was like, oh, how come? He's like, I just don't like it. I always get so much anxiety. I was like, okay. And so we started to ask questions, and we started him to get really introspective with himself and provide some perspective. And we walked it back to the craziest thing, that he had some trauma as a child that was connected to this idea of knocking on a Saturday. And he started out his door-to-door career knocking out on Saturdays and just was not going well. He'd get anxious and go home. And so for months and months and months now, he hadn't knocked one Saturday. And so we got him some skills and talked him through it and got him set up at least for this next blitz. And I didn't say anything of like, try to knock on Saturday or whatever. We just worked on that. You know, that's all we did during the session, is try to heal some of that up. And then either it was yesterday or the day before, which it's, what is it right now? Tuesday? Or it's Monday. Monday. So 2 days ago, I got a text Saturday night, and he's like, dude, I just knocked all day Saturday. He said, not only did I knock all Saturday, but I had the most appointments set than I've ever had in my door-to-door career.
Wow.
And it's nothing like it. It makes me, again, my whole fulfillment, nothing more fulfilling to give somebody some advice. And it's not because like I like to tell people what to do and it makes me feel good. But the fact that he was able to benefit from that could be tens of thousands of dollars if all three of those, all four of those, five of those, however many it was, go through, you know, and that's something that's benefited from his life, and to see that joy in him. But it's so interesting that it wasn't just about, we'll just go out and knock. Like, why aren't you knocking? Why aren't you going out and working? It's a Saturday. It's the most important. You can make all this money, whatever. It's like, no, it was this little child that he had inside of him that was suffering and that was terrified every time he stepped out on the doors on a Saturday.
Wow. And he didn't get afraid on like a Friday or a Thursday. It was really attached to that day.
It was attached to Saturdays. Wow. It was, yeah. And I'm talking to him, I know why, but I'm
right. You're going to keep that.
Yeah.
Private,
yeah.
Which I love hearing examples, you know, like that. Yeah. And where you can kind of really get the picture, and it helps because when you talk about examples of people you've worked with, the impact that you've had, you can apply that to yourself. You know, it's easy for someone to be like, okay, yeah, like that applies to me, and, you know, or something like that. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah.
Well, I think I want to point out how cool it is that you found your passion met value. I think sometimes
Yes.
It's important to open up your mind to make sure that you're opening up to your passions and opening up to getting paid for it and creating value, right? Mm-hmm. Because sometimes we just want the money. Sometimes we just want the passion. And I know a lot of people that have a lot of money, and I know a lot of people that work within their passion, but there's fewer and fewer as you get to people who have both, right? And I almost picture like your life is almost like this river that's going to carve out a canyon, and you just have to kind of follow your passion to wherever the lowest point is, where the money is, right? And so I think your skill set found this industry, summer sales, right? And the issue with summer sales companies is the manpower. The manpower, just to think of it as a machine, they have these soldiers, and they have to make their soldiers mentally tough for their bottom line to grow. And the biggest issue they have is that people just can't handle it, right? And so I think finding that value, that niche, is really what sets you apart, and that's why you're getting booked year round now. Yeah. Talk to us about how finding how do you create value in those industries?
Yeah, in door-to-door specifically, or just in the industry?
I think use how you create value in door-to-door to teach other people in all sorts of industries how they can find their niche.
Yeah, I think the main thing is understanding that, when you say like business isn't personal, I have a really close friend where he's like, no, business is personal. It represents who you are. And I think that's true. At the same time, on the same vein, like business is business in the sense that business has to make money. Like no matter how good they make their employees feel, no matter how many times they bring me in or how many times I meet with them or how many workshops I do or whatever it is, if they're not making money, like they can't bring me in the first place. They don't have a place for their employees to get help, It's not just, it is two-dimensional. It's not just looking out for just the company's bottom line. You're looking out for the person's livelihood too. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Exactly. You can't have one without the other. So I think, I've always said, like, do what you love and the money will come. And I think that is true. I think there's so much more behind that because you have to be extremely strategic. When I jumped into the door-to-door space, I'd known for a long time while I was working with student athletes all over the country, collegiate and high school athletes. I knew that I wanted to jump into the business realm. It was just, I was waiting and being super patient to find that exact niche. I knew that it's like, okay, well, I want to go in the medical field and do what I do. That's way too broad. Like I waited until it all kind of lined up, and I knew that I was just going to be kind of searching and looking and doing research and everything like that to find a very, very, very specific niche. And you can say small, but usually when in business, a small niche is millions, even billions of dollars, right? When it comes to business, which is the beautiful thing about business. So that would be, if you can find your passion, what you love to do, what gets you excited to wake up in the morning, and couple it with as specific of an industry inside of an industry inside of an industry, and you can find where, okay, my passion provides a direct impact and value in this very small little niche, and you can go own that niche, man, game over. Yeah. Game over.
It's just started, like I heard you say, I wanted to be in the NFL. Obviously, you're passionate about sports. Then it went to, okay, speaking is like another strong passion. And then you were coaching student athletes. No money in that, really. I mean, you got to get to the pros before you're going to make bucks off of coaching mentality.
Yep.
Summer sales, it's like the next closest thing. You're with people your age, you're with people you love, but finally you're coaching somewhere where there's a huge demand. And now if a summer sales company has an issue, they think of you. They say, okay, we need to get a tune up on our people's mindsets. Right? That to me, it's a beautiful story of how you found somewhere that you're valued and you're loving your life. So.
Yeah. And I think if you find an industry that has competition, I think that can be really good too, because it'll teach you really quick about your grit, about how is this really a passion I want to pursue, and then it'll refine you. So you might find a niche that is, has some competitors in the space, and that's just fine. That's just fine, because again, a niche in business is usually millions and billions. So,
I think starting a business like you have is probably really hard. I mean, am I wrong with that? Like building that momentum or building the clientele, or like if someone just says, "Hey, I want to be a speaker," and that's a big statement, you know, because there's what was going through your mind, and tell us like those ups and downs, like how you overcame whatever those hurdles were. And you talked a little bit about it. Like one, I thought it was interesting is, you know, you splitting back your time with like a regular job, making money, and then working. So what did you do to build this business, and what were some of the ups and downs with it?
Yeah. I mean, to your point, I think the number one thing I've learned as an entrepreneur is I've found the reason why people are not entrepreneurs.
Because it's so stressful.
It is. It is. So you don't like the security. You don't know when the next thing's going to come in. Like especially if you're prone to anxiety or prone to anything like that, like good friggin' luck, you know, call me up, because I have my therapist on speed dial. But I think that was one of the biggest things I've learned. I think going through the process is, I initially found people, this is super common and kind of cliche at this point, but I just found people that were doing it. Found people that had done it and gone to their grassroots, and what did they do? You know, like my idols, I love Jordan Peterson. I love Tony Robbins. And if I could combine those two people, like that's who I want to be. Yeah. That's what I want to create, you know?
We love our Tony Robbins memes, huh?
Do you know what we're talking about?
Absolutely. Yeah. He's so good.
Funny.
He's so good. But just on the scale that Tony Robbins has done it, and he fills stadiums, like I want to fill stadiums, and then you bring in the genius of Jordan Peterson and the intellect, like, man, you know? So anyway, but I started to invest in myself. I got some books, like get paid, you know, learning how to get paid to speak and all that kind of stuff. And it really helped me outline things and again, I walked it back to being whatever you're trying to do, be as specific as you can. You know, for me in speaking, it was, what is my core audience? What is the demographic within that audience? What is the age? You know, what is my keynote speech? What is exactly the thing that I'm going to speak on that I can just like immediately tell somebody? Right. And getting so specific, because you can't be everything for everyone, right? And if you try to be, you'll be nothing to everyone. Yes. You know, and so that's essentially what I did. And so I just started speaking for free. I just got my connections, started calling them up, and then I brought a videographer with me and started to create content so I could go be like, hey, I spoke at this person. This is what it was. I got a testimonial, and then just built from there. So I started from free with high schools, and that worked up to colleges. And then, you know, and then I had all that, and transitioning the door-to-door space, it was a little bit easier because I was like, hey, look, you essentially have athletes on your team going out and knocking doors. I've been doing this for the past, 2+ years. This is the results that these athletes have gotten. Can you imagine what that would do to your bottom line if you were to implement that with your team?
Yeah.
So that's kind of the growth.
I like that. I was just thinking that most the summer sales guys are probably athletes, which is kind of cool.
A lot of them are.
But no, I think that's really, really great advice. I mean, thinking about getting into the industry, what did you do? You started going for free. You didn't like, all right, here's my rate, 10, 20K for me to come speak. Who wants me? Mm-hmm. You went in and sought those out and started with your own network, which is you're able to grow from that. Mm-hmm. So I think that's really powerful and a good advice on trying to build it up. What was like that first one like? I was originally going to ask, like, I was thinking about like, what was your first gig? But and what was that one like? And how do you like look at yourself back then now?
Yeah. I look back, there's a couple of them that I'm like, ooh, I wish I could do that again. But for the most part, like my first one, I think I feel, like I said, you are every day that you've lived, right? So I have a relationship with, the different parts of me. It sounds like hippie, and stuff.
Yeah.
And woo-woo, but like, it's so real. It's so real. So I look back at that 24-year-old that contacted his old high school football coach and was like, hey, can I come speak to your guys for 15 minutes? And I was so nervous. I wanted to make sure I had them all memorized. Like I didn't want to cue card anything. I worked super hard. And it went really well. And it was something that was like, oh, I can do this. Like I I made somebody cry. You know, like I can,
build your momentum.
Yes, there's there's power in that. And so I look back at that one and I'm just like, I'm just super proud of that kid that, you know, decided to take that leap and put himself on the line, was super, super vulnerable with something that he wanted to do and put it all out there, you know?
Yeah, it's a good word we haven't used yet is vulnerable and being that. And I think we were talking about that last week, but it's a powerful thing. And in order for us to create that change or to make those choices that you said we need to make, like anyone can do it if we choose.
Yeah, that vulnerability is the strongest thing you can ever do for your life is be vulnerable, step into that.
Do you ever have people who are reluctant to get vulnerable with you?
Oh, 100%.
How do you
the door-to-door bros?
Yeah.
Like, are you kidding me?
The most I'll say it, the most insecure guys out there. Just kidding.
Well, insecurity stems from the inability to be vulnerable.
No, there's all kinds. I have a lot of relatives in the space, but I think you think of like the ones that give the good ones a bad rap are very reluctant to be vulnerable, I would say. And so how do you approach that?
Yeah, the first thing I do is I never call it therapy because people run from that.
Yeah.
But the main thing I think this is a question I get a lot because you see, I mean, usually the minority is the loudest, right? The minority sticks out. So you look at like a group of people, a culture or whatever it is, and those, you know, that are the loudest, that are most taboo, whatever, stick out, and you're like, oh, and then we generalize, and it's not good.
Correct.
Same thing with the door-to-door space. That was another huge thing that I've learned in the space is there are so many genuine, hardworking, driven people that are like going to change this freaking world.
Yeah.
Because they're doing something so hard and they have such a good head on them, their shoulders, and they're so smart and tactful in the way they do their lives that they're killers, you know, and they're gonna kill it in life.
They're the last ones with grit.
Yeah, exactly. So I think, you know, breaking down those walls of vulnerability it helps coming from, I always felt safe to be vulnerable growing up. At the same time, I grew up in a really small town. I grew up, you know, around a family that, you know, loved horses and the ranch life and all that kind of stuff. I never grew up on one, but so I knew like the whole just tough it out. I grew up playing sports, you know, just like put your head down and go to work. And so I understand that mentality. And I understand also why we hold it up there. And the louder it is, they are the quickest to cry. They're the quickest to crumble. They're the quickest to fall back and be like, they're my best clients. They're the best teams that I work with. The best companies are those that have the Ferraris sitting out there because it makes them feel good or whatever it is. They wear the blingiest clothes because they're having somebody that they can finally feel safe with to actually be themselves. Because we talked about connectivity at the very beginning, and that's what we're trying to do. We try to show off or put things out there, or whatever, because if I'm person A, but I act like person B, and person B gets rejected, I'm good. I can act like person B all day long. I can make that person look the way I want, be accepted in the way I think people want to be around me. And if I get rejected, I'm fine. But if person A gets rejected, that hurts. That's traumatic. That leaves a scar. And so if we can bring out, you know, take away that person B from these guys, that's the way I look at it, and allow them to like tap into that person A sometimes for the first time in their life. Ooh, it's the most impactful thing.
Wow. I wish you could. I wish we could right now try to crack Ben's shell. Let's get Ben vulnerable.
I'm bawling.
I'm not afraid to cry on camera.
Should we do it? We don't have to, Ben. We don't have to. Jenz. I honestly love what you're doing, and I admire it a lot. Like your story. Obviously, you've had a big impact on me in my life. You know, we talked a little bit about like being in Sag Miller's class and just looking up to you and how much what you were doing had a big influence on me. You know, you standing up, public speaking and sharing about those internships that sent me over to Congressman Stewart's office, like was a big impact in my life. I talk about that all the time because it was so fun. It was a great experience. But I just appreciate what you're doing and the work that you're doing and working on this side of this topic or this thing that doesn't get talked about a lot, and gets to work on people that, you know, don't really want, you know, to work on these things, but like you can approach it in a different way. Like it's not therapy, right? That's not what you're doing, but you're helping so many people in such a powerful way that so many of us really have these problems and they just get buried. You know, I don't know how I'm sure when you probably see someone who, you know, is able to unlock some of these things and fix some of these problems they're having. And then just like, how could you live life, you know, without it, like going so long without, you know, taking these steps that you do and you help people with. So just admire what you're doing and really appreciate it. And hopefully I need to do some of my own therapy sessions.
Well, thanks, Callan. I appreciate that, man. I really do. Thank you for that. And to your point, like I was one of them. I was one of those people that carried a lot for a really long time. Hid it, lied about it, didn't talk about it, ran from it, all of that, you know, and now I look back and I was like, man, I missed out on so much. And I think timing is everything. And the way that it was supposed to be was beautiful and meant to be and everything. But there's so much of just compassion and love and really success that I could have had in my personal life that I missed out on because I was hiding. Yeah.
I mean, you're very ambitious, you know, like one of those go-getter kids from the get-go. Was some of that like ambition and like everything you were striving for, was that masking some of those things you were hiding? Like, those things you're hiding, did you hide them with like work or hide them with the ambition that you had?
Oh yeah, for sure. I think we all do in some sense, in some way, that we try to be as successful as we can to mask everything else, you know, and try to be perceived in a certain way. So we're not asked any questions about things we don't want to talk about and stuff like that. I think it's coupled with that. And the other one is I had, you know, from day one, we talk about, you know, you don't forget anything. Day zero, you are every day that you've lived. I had a mom that fought for me from day one. And she fought for, she went through 5 miscarriages. She brought me essentially I had seizures when I was born. I didn't have an immune system or digestive system for 3 years. Like, and all while she had her own stuff, she had fibromyalgia, vertigo, migraine, all these things. And so from day zero, I knew I was worth it. From day zero, I had somebody fighting for me. And I think that's instilled. I attribute everything that I've ever gained to her because she showed me that whatever it is that I wanted to do, whatever it is, that I was worth it because I was worth fighting for. And, you know, that's my goal for others, is to show them how worth it they are to fight for themselves and fight for those around them.
I love that.
Yeah, you talk about moms. I mean, moms really, you can look at someone and usually tell how much their mom put into them, right? And even if you didn't have a good mom, you know, you can learn from that, be that for someone else, you know. But that's really cool, man. I think it's been I've had a ton of takeaways. I mean, what would you say, just kind of maybe to cap it, like what are you hoping for as the number one takeaway in as far as mindset goes from your clients and maybe for our audience today?
That's good. I think just what I said is that whatever you want to do, whatever you want to go, that you're worth it. You're worth fighting for yourself. You're worth going through the trials, for making one of my favorite quotes is, in any story, in any good story, there are things that are seen and there are things that are hidden. And I think that the parts of our life that are hidden, the more we talk about those and bring them to our conscious, the more we find trusted people around us, the more we actually learn, like, I am worth it. I am worth bringing this. I'm worth being heard. I'm worth being accepted because I'm doing it for myself first. And so, you know, to cap it off, that would be my number one thing is whatever you are doing in life, wherever your passion wants to take you, you are worth it. No matter how difficult, no matter how many times you've been rejected, no matter what people think or say, feel about you, that you are worth whatever it is that you want to achieve.
What a great message. Yeah, I think that's a powerful takeaway, you know, that everyone got. So thank you so much for Jenz again for coming on the show and for sharing a little bit of you. I hope everybody seeks out Jenz and Momentum and
where can people find you?
Yes.
Instagram, Facebook, all the normal platforms, Jenz Bunnell. And then you can go to my website, momentumwe.com.
Sweet.
Awesome, man. Thanks again. That was another awesome episode of Beyond Networth Podcast.